Hello guys, this is Augustina and I'm gonna be recommending some beginner friendly songs. So let's go into it. The first album is All to Zero. From this I would recommend My Way verse 1 and verse 2. Those two are probably the easiest in the entire album. And other than those, I would say Treasure verse 2 is easier than verse 1. Then I'd recommend Stay. Both of them, Stay verse 1 and verse 2, those are a little harder than Treasure. Next, from the 0 to 1 album, we have Light verse 1 and Light verse 2. I remember relying a lot on these when I started playing the game because we had missions like 3-star, 2 songs from so-and-so album and stuff. And I remember playing Light for the 0 to 1 album. So I'd recommend Light verse 1 and verse 2 from this. One Tall is one of the easier albums in the game. It doesn't have really any, very hard type songs. Illusion is probably the hardest in this. So since we're starting up talking about beginner friendly songs, I would recommend Where's Utopia? Yeah, Utopia verse 1 and Utopia verse 2. So I don't know how often you guys notice the world records, but if you've seen, Utopia is one of the most congested leaderboards. To be fair, this album has very congested leaderboards, and it's because there was a time when Stan would play this game, so people would try to get a shout out from him and stuff. So let me just take a quick check if his name's still there out there somewhere or it got blurred off. I'm sorry guys, you'll have to bear with my network for a little bit. Yeah, you see San is second out there, so yeah. He used to often play this song, so that caused a lot of commotion in the leaderboards, and it has the highest cutoff for the leaderboards in this game, I believe. So that's Utopia verse 1. Then I also recommend Utopia verse 2. Utopia verse 2 is shorter than verse 1. So if you want to have a quick play, then I recommend Utopia verse 2 and Aurora verse 2. Both of them are easy. Aurora is a little easier according to me, and Aurora is also shorter. So Aurora and Utopia are my recommendations from this album. And if you feel those are too easy for you, you can start with Wave verse 1. I would not recommend Wave verse 2 for the reason that Hongjung's rap is a little hard to clear. So my output from this album would be Aurora and Utopia. Next, moving on, we have All to Action. This, because of the Wonderlands, has an overall higher difficulty. I mean, it has Precious as well, so that's a little hard. But this has very clearable songs, like there's Sunrise verse 1, the Sunrise verse 2, and then there's both the With Yous. With Yous are easy, Sunrise is easy as well, but Sunrise is shorter than With You, so I recommend playing Sunrise over With You if you don't want to invest too much time in it. And if you think those are too easy for you, then I would recommend Thank You verse 2. Verse 1 will take some time because it has some spam notes in it. So overall, I'd just say Sunrise and With You. Those two are my recommendations from this album. From Action to Answer, I have only 2 songs to recommend, and that's Star, verse 1 and verse 2. Those are the only 2 verses I'd recommend from this album. Precious is doable. Okay, so Precious has some triangular notes at the chorus, more like 3 notes placed in like a triangle style, and I'm not comfortable with playing those, so I'd say it's hard for me. But if you're comfortable with that, I would say you could play Precious. And honestly, the triangular part is a big drawback for me because Precious Verse 2 is the shortest song in the game. And obviously the song length does not matter. So if you want to, play more for like the same amount of RP that you're getting, then, gain more RP for the same amount of plays, then I would recommend Precious. But if you've just started out with the game, I would recommend only Star from this album. From Fever Part 1, since this has Thanks, it has an overall high difficulty, but the overall album isn't as hard as All to Action, I'd say. I have Precious Verse 1 and Verse 2 to recommend from this album. And I have One Day at a Time to recommend from this album. So One Day at a Time and Fever Verse 1 and Verse 2. Those are the easiest out of this album. And if you feel you want to go a step higher, then I would recommend Good Little Boy Verse 2. To the Beat and Thanks are definitely on the harder side, so I would say avoid those. From Fever Part 2, this one is one of the higher difficulty albums in the game, and not just, the entire album as a whole is pretty hard, but this does have a few doable songs. Like this has Time of Love, Verse 1, Celebrate Verse 1, and Take Me Home Verse 1. I've noticed that in this album, Verse 1s are easier than Verse 2s. So from this album, my final output will be Take Me Home Verse 1, Time of Love Verse 1, and Celebrate Verse 1. Fever Part 3 is a lot like 1 to All. It's not congested, but in the sense that the songs are easier to clear. I think the only hard ones are probably Rocky and Eternal Sunshine Verse 2 and Full. Eternal Sunshine Verse 2 is the same story as Wave. It has Hongjung's rap in the start, so it's a little hard to clear. But otherwise, most of the songs are doable. Like you could do Deja Vu, you could do All About You, you could do Feeling Like I Do, you could do Not Too Late. Now, Not Too Late is probably the easiest song in the entire game. That's my opinion. I feel Not Too Late is the easiest song in the entire game. So if you're currently an easy mode player and you want to start normal, I'd recommend Not Too Late. If you're currently a normal mode player and you want to start hard, I recommend Not Too Late. If you're completely new to the system and you want to start playing, I recommend Not Too Late. It's my top 1 recommendation if you're new to the game. Next we have Fever Epilogue. From this has a few tough songs. It's got Wonderland. It's got this Wonderland, so it is a little hard. But it has Turbulence Verse 1 and Verse 2. Those two are pretty simple. And it has Be With You as well. The sorting is messed up in the game, so I'm having to, go here and there. Here's Turbulence Verse 2. Here's Be With You Verse 2. And yeah, Be With You Verse 1 and Turbulence Verse 1. These are the easiest from this album. Be With You is easier than Turbulence in my opinion. So sometimes certain, events require you to get certain songs plays with 0 goods, or probably 1 to 3 star song, then I would recommend Be With You in those cases. The Letter is a pretty doable song as well, but it's long. So if the song length doesn't matter and you just want to be able to clear songs, then I would recommend The Letter. Otherwise, my go-to would be With You and Turbulence. This is a lot like Fever Part 2. I think it's harder than Fever Part 2. So I have only Take Me Home to recommend from this album. I do not have any other recommendations. Cyberpunk Live would be joining the World Tour album after this update, but I do not recommend it anyways. So only Take Me Home from that one. Beyond Zero luckily has Japanese versions of the easier songs. So from this I have Take Me Home, Turbulence, and Deja Vu to recommend. Those 3 are pretty doable from this album. And just a tip, in case you do have played, Rocky the original verse or the Rocky live verse, and you feel boxer version and you want to try the boxer version, I'd let you know that it's a little easier than those 2. So if you feel these Deja Vu, Turbulence, and not the King. If Take Me Home, Turbulence, and Deja Vu are pretty easy, then you could go for Rocky Boxer's version. Oh dear, Movement. This is a cursed album. I have nothing to recommend. So we're moving on. But seriously, I have nothing to recommend from this album. The first update we got from this was Gorilla. And since then, it's just been hard songs over hard songs over hard songs. So nothing to recommend from this album. If you're a beginner, just play, if you are a beginner and you play normal mode, just play this album in easy or something, because I do not recommend this album at all for beginners. Paradigm is a new album. I don't have any recommendations. I mean, it's literally the only song, but it's hard, so. Luckily, it's a Japanese album, so most events won't require you to play it, but you never know. Now, From the Witness, it's a single album, so it's obviously gonna have a fewer number of songs. And from this, I'd recommend only Halazia verse 1. The others are hard. They're not beginner friendly, so only Halazia verse 1 from this one. So that's all the albums, folks. Thank you for watching, and you guys can subscribe and like the video. Subscribe to the channel and like the video if you found this helpful. Thank you.